very cool, very cool.
Yeah,
Now, we know the Bonny Doon label in Ontario.
cool.
I really appreciate you talking about that. But we have some other wines that are in our market now. And it's funny, before I knew of the connection to Bonny Doon, when I saw these labels, I was thinking they're kind of Bonny Doon-esque in a funny way. There is
Oh,
that
that's so
that
cool.
kind of sense of humor going through a lot of the labels. And I was thinking, oh, that's good. And then when I saw your logo and it had Bonny Doon, I was like, what's going on here? So let's look at some of the wines that you have in our market in Ontario. First ones we'll
Great.
look at are from Washington State. And it's not a label I was overly familiar with before, so I'd love to know the backstory. This is a Skyfall, Washington State red wine blend. And then I have the Skyfall Merlot over here. There we go. You can see the labels. It's hard to do this. There we go.
Yeah, that looks
Tell
great.
us a little bit about Skyfall.
Do you want to take
Sure.
it?
You want me to take this one, Ev?
Yeah.
So this Skyfall is a brand launched in the early 2010s, 2011, 2012. Um, and it was a partnership between two big wine businesses here in the US. We acquired it in 2020, 4 years ago or so, and it was here's the original label, so
Oh,
real classic
yeah.
looking, clean label. And so through a series of interviews and surveys and trekking all over Washington State, we had a really cool trip to Washington. Um, we found that people associated the name with James Bond or celestialness, the constellations. One thing that we found really interesting about Washington State was just how difficult it is to grow grapes there. In Washington State, there's less than 6 inches of rain each year
Mhm.
compared
Eastern
to,
Washington.
oh, it'd be in, I'm going to have to convert it into metric for the LCBO, right? There's very little rain. It's basically a desert. There's no rain
Yeah.
and there's no soil. The soil has been eroded away by these glacial floods millions of years ago. So there's just this kind of fine powder. They call it loess. It doesn't
Yeah.
hold water very well. Yeah, you're familiar. No pests can live in this soil. There's frosts, there's fires. When we were there, it snowed. So it's just like this very rugged growing conditions. And so we really leaned into the concept of resiliency. And so each Skyfall label shows the resilience of the grapevine
I,
emerging, and kind of the beauty of the vine in Washington State. And then everything about the label speak to Washington. So what flower is that? Oh, that's the rhododendron, the state flower. This mountain is the Cascade Mountains.
very cool.
The state bird. So we had a lot of
Golden.
fun really leaning into Washington State. The state slogan is hope for the future, which also sounds political, but that's the state slogan, hope for the future. We
Yes.
put a Nirvana quote on there.
No.
Nirvana, the band,
Yeah.
comes from
Yeah.
Washington State. So we had a lot of fun. And then, but equally serious as we take the branding and the packaging, we take the wine. Nicole, do you want to talk on
Hmm.
the wines here?
Nicole, I had a question
Sure.
for you. So
Oh yeah.
you must have previously, did you make you've made Washington State Riesling before, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Is this the first time that you made Washington State red wine?
yes,
Right.
absolutely.
And how was that different for you?
Well, it was very different. I didn't have a lot of experience or knowledge on Eastern Washington Reds.
Yeah.
Like you said, Bonny Doon had a brand called Pack Rim Riesling. And so I worked with some vineyards and actually helped develop some vineyards in the area that we actually went to go look for some, look at vineyards and wine for Skyfall. But up until this recent trip in 2020, I didn't have a whole lot of experience
Mhm.
with Washington Reds, and I was really, really impressed, to be honest. It was very different than California.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, how um I guess there's a when Andrew was talking about the resilience, and there was this concentration, and the structure of the wines was really impressive, especially varieties like Merlot. We came away just thinking, wow, I mean, you wouldn't need a lot of the techniques that we might use in California. You wouldn't need that at all to sort of concentrate, tannins
Mhm.
and give that wine this backbone. Like it just comes very naturally in Washington. But at the same time, they have so many struggles and challenges that not every variety is going to get ripe every year. Um, the vintage variability is a big issue for Washington. So, it's not just like, oh, this is so much better. Why aren't we doing this in California? It's just there's so many differences. And something I really my intention with winemaking always is really try to express varietal character, and express, when we talk about terroir, really embracing where that wine's coming from, and not trying to make it just like another wine. I didn't want it to be, this is like a California Bordeaux blend. I wanted it to be a Washington. And so my approach is maybe a little bit more modern style.
I have to say, Washington and red wine, the word value is never normally there for me. They're quite expensive once they get to here. But both of these wines uh, exhibit a fair amount of value. I thought they're both really solid wines with a really nice purity of fruit coming through both of them. Let's speak a little bit about the red blend here and what goes into that.
So, there isn't a lot of different grape varieties to choose from, I would say, in in Washington currently. So a lot of what you see are, the Cabernet, Syrah, Merlot. There is a little bit of Malbec. I didn't tend to want to use Malbec in the blends. There tends to be highly, highly like that bramble berry,
Yeah.
beautiful, I think on its own, perhaps as a varietal could be really interesting. Um, but as a blender, I wasn't as drawn to that. So a lot of Skyfall is Cab, Syrah, and Merlot blends. So that is what the red blend is, just varying percentages of those varieties.
Now, how often do you get up to Washington, or is this done virtually, remotely, the winemaking for these wines?
So I tend to get up there some 2 to 3 times a year,
Okay.
depending on what's going on, and what we might have. Sometimes we're meeting some people to show them around, or sometimes it's just to go and check on vineyards, or get prepping for bottling or blending. Um, like I was mentioning, going up and maybe checking out a vineyard for perhaps purchasing grapes or working with a grower.
Right.
So it really kind of depends on what we're doing, but it's I would say yes, like some of it is virtual, but I do spend some time.
Superb. Now, with these two wines here, I always like to ask both the winemakers and the people representing the wines where they see these at the dinner table, if at the dinner table, because you must have done so many kind of not winemakers dinners, vignerons dinners, presentations, and the like. Where do these sit for you? That goes out to all three of you.
I'm not sure
I'll take it if you
okay,
want.
good, because I'm not sure I understand.
Amy, you nailed it. I am the chatty one. So I'm like really trying to tone it down here with 4 people. um, I love the structure of these wines. I think that the tannin is like it just brings this this really rewarding complexity that lends it to pairing with much bigger dishes. I
Sure.
think that a lot of times consumers are kind of shy of tannin. And you'll see on some of our other brands, like we're really managing tannin. We talk about the word smooth a lot.
Mhm.
So I really think that the Skyfall wines are kind of this bridge into more structure. In terms of at the dinner table, I think that there's plenty of fruit, so it doesn't have to have food with it. You could drink this before, but I love the structure and the fruit to pair it with like some bigger meat dishes. Um, do you
Yeah,
agree
I
with that, Nicole?
recently, yeah, I was going to say I recently did well, yeah, I guess you would call it a winemaker dinner. And it was an Italian restaurant,
Mhm.
Cool.
and the wines really paired beautifully with that cuisine. And and some of those dishes were richer, a little
Yeah.
more hearty. Definitely, some beef dishes, some creamy, fatty dishes, but the wines really, really paired well.
No, I can see these
Jamie,
as a regular wine for me to pick up now because there's nothing in there to frighten the horses. They're quite wines with quite broad appeal, but at the same time quite focused. Quite as I said, that purity of fruit is very, very attractive to me in these wines. And I'll definitely be going back to get a few more of those.
Oh, thank you for saying that, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
We think that there's something very special about the Washington State Merlot in
Yep.
particular. And I'm sure people are hearing this and rolling their eyes, Merlot, but we
No.
fell in love with Merlot in Washington.
Yeah.
And so there's a little Merlot kind of goes into all these wines, and then we make a Merlot. And so really excited that was one that was picked up.
How did that really mediocre film have such an impact on the Merlot market? Because that was
It
a
did,
lot
right? It
like
totally
Merlot
did.
now, right?
Yeah.
Really did.
There's rumors that there's a second one coming out that will
No, it was
help.
terrible. I was going through a divorce at the time, and I was seeing
Oh,
down in San Luis
Oh,
Obispo. So it was. I can remember I would journey down there, and I was going through these little towns and watch the film, and it was sad times. Yeah, I couldn't watch that film again.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So-
Jamie, real quick,
Oh,
if you don't mind me, I just want to give a tidbit there. What in my experience with Washington and Skyfall, a lot of the general public thinks of Washington as the Pacific Northwest, as Seattle, as rainy, as
yeah,
forest and lush, and this is Eastern Washington. This is about 3 hours east of Seattle. You go through the Cascade Mountain Range and it's lush, and then when you get on the other side, it's desert and it's open lands, and everyone's eyes just kind of
Well said.
like, oh my gosh, what is out here? These are the plains. And then you come to the Columbia River. It's this massive, massive river, a huge bridge, and then you're on the eastern side of Washington. And so I think that is really what we've portrayed to people, or our goal with this, the resiliency of Mother Nature in Eastern Washington. And in terms of the wine styles, they're very friendly wines. You can pop
yeah,
them open and pour. As you mentioned, price point, usually they're in that like 20, sub $20, even sub 20 Canadian. We
yeah.
really want to deliver that great value. You certainly don't have to geek out on the wine, but then if you're a wine geek,
Sure.
you can definitely geek out on it. Nicole just does a fantastic job of expressing that terroir of minimal intervention, really showcasing Eastern Washington's a little bit bigger style tannin structure. We always think it's fun to kind of compare them. We have California brands to compare Washington cab to a California cab and really taste the nuances and the differences there. We embrace that.
Now you mentioned before, what you have conversations with Randall about where the brand is today, all of that stuff. Have you had much communication with the original owners of Skyfall about what they think of what you've done with the brand?
We have a little bit. I don't know. I think that they're happy with it. Renato, it'd be Renato. I'll ask him that specifically, actually, Jamie. That's a good question. One of the things that we found was there wasn't something die hard that customers absolutely loved about the brand. And that's part of why you saw such a revolution in
Yeah.
our package.
Yeah.
We basically launched a new brand with the same name, right? I mean, like totally different, unrecognizable.
I mean, you've gone
And
from a very generic label to something that's really in your face. So
yeah,
it's
exactly. And that I would say was something that was both exciting and fun, but also just terrifying to do with the brand because you know you worry that no one's ever going to buy it ever again.
Yeah, but I
That
think
yeah, go ahead, Ev.
I think it's a little bit funny because we heard a lot of people say, don't change the label. We love this. It's the banquet style. And yet in the same vein, this new style, people are like, oh, I want this at my wedding. I want this to be
yeah.
on the table, take pictures of it. So it's not that it's, you know, wedding style, banquet style, but it's that little bit upper
Yeah,
class. People want to showcase it now.
Oh, I get
well
that.
said. One thing we talk about a lot is the word remarkable. We want any packaging that we put out, we want it to be worthy of a remark so that someone says something or feels something. It elicits emotion. And so with all of our brands, you really see we're really trying to start a conversation, to catch someone's eye and have them feel something. And in this case, it would be the resilience and the beauty of Washington State.
One thing that, I love the design in all of these bottles, but with wine, having been in this business for a long time, there is a lot of style over substance, but all of these wines are very enjoyable to drink, right? They're really good, as well as
Thank
the
you.
packaging. I'm a sucker for nice labels, and the number of times I've bought a bottle of wine with a beautiful label, and it's just been so mediocre. It's not even made it to the cooking pot. But these wines are all they all stand out for me for sure.